In this video we will discuss about the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program or Sinp. This program is a way to immigrate to Canada if you want to live in the province of Saskatchewan. The province of Saskatchewan invites residency applications from non-Canadians who want to make Saskatchewan their home. Nominates successful applicants to the federal government for permanent residency in Canada. There are 3 program categories you can apply through the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program: International Skilled Worker, Saskatchewan Experience, Entrepreneur and Farm. The International Skilled Worker category is for skilled workers who want to work and live in Saskatchewan. There are 4 subcategories in this program. These are Employment Offer, Saskatchewan Express Entry, Occupations in Demand, and International Skilled Worker Hard to Fill Skills Pilot. This Saskatchewan Experience category is for foreign nationals who are currently working and living in Saskatchewan on a valid work permit. There are 6 subcategories that foreign workers currently working and living in Saskatchewan may apply for under the Sinp. These are Skilled Worker with Existing Work Permit, Semi-Skilled Agriculture Worker with Existing Work Permit, Health Professionals, Hospitality Sector Project, Long-Haul Truck Driver Project, and Students. The Entrepreneur category is for foreign nationals who wish to obtain or partner in a business in Saskatchewan and be actively involved in managing it while residing in Saskatchewan. Subcategories are International Graduate Entrepreneur category and Farm Owner and Operator category. Now, let's see the eligibility requirements in the International Skilled Worker category under Employment Offer, subcategory. Score at least 60 points on the Sinp point assessment grid. Have at least 1 year work experience in the past 10 years, in your intended occupation. Have a language score of at least Canadian Language Benchmark, CLB, 4. Be eligible for Saskatchewan licensing if your intended occupation is in a regulated profession or compulsory apprenticeship trade. Have an offer for a permanent, full-time job in Saskatchewan. You will need a valid Sinp job approval letter to show proof. Your offer must be in an occupation in the National Occupational Classification. NOC, Matrix Level A, B, or O, or in a designated trade in Saskatchewan. Please note the following exclusions: food and beverage servers persons must apply under the Hospitality Sector Project subcategory. Only those with high-skilled health occupations eligible for the International Healthcare Worker EOI pool can apply to this subcategory. Other health professionals will need to apply to the Saskatchewan Experience Health Professionals subcategory. If you are applying under NOC 3413, then you may be eligible for the Hard to Fill Skills, HFS, pilot. Subcategory 2, Saskatchewan Express Entry. To be eligible, you must be accepted into IRCC's Express Entry pool and pay a non-refundable $350 application fee. You may qualify if you live outside Canada or have proof of legal status in Canada, are not a refugee claimant, and have a valid Express Entry profile number and job seeker code. Score a minimum of 60 points on the Sinp point assessment grid. Have a language test result that meets the Federal Express Entry language requirements. Have completed post-secondary school or training that is comparable to at least 1 year of Canadian education. For all education outside Canada, you must submit an Educational Credential Assessment, ECA. Those who have finished training as part of high school do not need to submit an ECA, but must apply for Saskatchewan licensure. Have experience in a job that is not on the excluded occupation list and belongs to NOC 0, A or B occupations. The minimum need for work experience is, for skilled professionals, not tradespeople, 1 year work experience in the past 10 years. For skilled tradespeople, 2 years work experience in a skilled trade in the past 5 years. 1 year work experience in Canada in the past 3 years, skilled tradespeople and skilled professionals. Your above work experience must be in the field of your completed post-secondary education or training. Your work experience must be related to your job and education. Visit Sinp requirements related to professional status or licensure to see if your job meets specific Sinp education requirements. You may need to show a professional status or proof of eligibility for licensure for your job. Show settlement funds and the settlement plan. Subcategory 3. Occupation in demand. You live outside of Canada or have proof of legal status in Canada. Are not a refugee claimant. Score a minimum of 60 points out of 110 on the SINP point assessment grid. Have a language score of at least 4, Canadian Language Benchmark, CLB, 4. Some employers may ask for language scores that are higher than CLB 4. Completed post-secondary education, training or apprenticeship that's comparable to that in Canada have earned a diploma, certificate or degree. For education outside of Canada, you must submit an Educational Credential Assessment or ECA. Individuals who have completed trades or job training as part of their high school education must instead apply for Saskatchewan licensure. Have work experience that is high-skilled in NOC 0, A or B, and not on the excluded occupation list. You must have a minimum of 1 year of full-time, minimum 30 hours per week, paid work experience in a skilled occupation over the past 10 years related to your field of education. Your work experience must be related to your occupation and education. You may need to provide proof of professional status or of eligibility for licensure. And have proof of settlement funds and the settlement plan. Subcategory 4. Hard to fill skills palette. This subcategory is for intermediate and low-skilled workers in eligible, high-demand occupations who have an offer for a job in Saskatchewan and meet the criteria of this subcategory. Eligibility requirements. Have at least 1 year full-time work experience in the past 3 years in your intended occupation. Or 6 months full-time, 780 hours, working in Saskatchewan in the job. Have a language score of at least Canadian Language Benchmark, CLB, 4. Some employers or regulators may ask for scores that are higher than CLB 4. Have completed the equivalent of Canadian secondary school, high school, or higher level education. If your studies were not completed in Canada, you will need to submit an Educational Credential Assessment. Transport truck drivers require mandatory entry-level training, MELT, to obtain a commercial Class 1 license to drive semi-trucks in Saskatchewan. Nominations issued for NOC 7511, transport truck drivers will be conditional until proof is provided to the SNP after you arrive that you have completed MELT training and have a valid Class 1 license. This training is done while living in Saskatchewan. Have an SNP-approved offer for a permanent, full-time job in Saskatchewan. You will need a valid SNP job approval letter from your employer to show proof. The offer must be in one of the following occupations. NOC Code 9619. Other laborers in processing, manufacturing and utilities. 9617. Laborers in food, beverage and associated products processing. 9612. Laborers in metal fabrication. 9536. Industrial painters, coaters and metal finishing process operators. 9526. Mechanical assemblers and inspectors. 9461. Process control and machine operators, food, beverage and associated processing. 9431. Sawmill machine operators. 9416. Metalworking and forging machine operators. 8431. General farm workers. 7611. Construction trades helpers and laborers. 7521. Heavy equipment operators, except crane. 7511. Transport truck drivers. 7452. Material handlers. 6733. Janitors, caretakers and building superintendents. 6731. Light duty cleaners. 6711. Food counter attendants, kitchen helpers and related support occupations. 6525. Hotel front desk clerks. 6513. Food and beverage servers. 4412. Home support workers, housekeepers and related occupations. 3414. Other assisting occupations in support of health services. 3413. Nurse aides, orderlies and patient service associates. 1525. Dispatchers and 1521. Shippers and receivers. Note: this pilot is not available to employers hiring home support workers, housekeepers and related occupations, NOC 4412, who reside in the client's residence or their place of work. Employers seeking workers to reside in the client's residence or their place of work must utilize Canada's caregiver programs for recruitment. Next category, Saskatchewan experience. This category is for foreign nationals who are currently working and living in Saskatchewan on a valid work permit. The 6 subcategories are: skilled worker with existing work permit, semi-skilled agriculture worker with existing work permit, health professionals, hospitality sector project, long-haul truck driver project and students. Eligibility for Saskatchewan experience category. Subcategory, skilled worker with existing work permit. This subcategory is for skilled workers who have been working in Saskatchewan with a valid work permit for at least 6 months. Have a permanent full-time job offer from a Saskatchewan employer. The job is required to be in National Occupation Classification, NOC, Matrix A, B or 0, or in a designated trade, and meet the criteria of this subcategory. Criteria are: have a permanent full-time job offer from a Saskatchewan employer. The job must be in NOC Matrix A, B or 0, or in a designated trade. Have a valid SINP job approval letter. Have worked more than 6 months for the employer offering the job, with a valid work permit. Your job offer must be for the same career you have been working in for the past 6 months. Have at least a score of Canadian language benchmark CL4 if your job offer is in a NOCC or D designated trade. And can show you are eligible for Saskatchewan licensure if your occupation is regulated in Saskatchewan. Subcategory 2, semi-skilled agriculture worker with existing work permit. This subcategory is for semi-skilled workers who have been working for more than 6 months with a valid work permit for the employer offering a job, or who have previously worked in Saskatchewan for a minimum of 6 months. Have a permanent full-time job offer from a Saskatchewan employer. The job is required to be in the following NOC occupations: NOC 8431, General Farm Worker, and NOC 8432, Nursery and Greenhouse Worker, and meet the criteria of this subcategory. The criteria are: have a permanent full-time job offer from a Saskatchewan employer in NOC 8431, General Farm Worker, and NOC 8432, Nursery and Greenhouse Worker. Have a valid SINP job approval letter. Have worked for more than 6 months for the employer offering the job, with a valid work permit. Your job offer must be for the same career that you have been working in for the past 6 months. If you are not yet working in Saskatchewan, you can apply if you have proof that you worked in Saskatchewan before for a minimum of 6 months. Your work permit must be for Seasonal Agriculture Worker Program, International Experience Canada, and Temporary Foreign Worker Program. Have completed the equivalent of Canadian secondary school, high school, or above, with an educational credential assessment. Have a minimum score of Canadian Language Benchmark, CLB, for if your job offer is in a NOCCO. Subcategory 3. Health Professionals. This subcategory is for skilled workers who have been working full-time in Saskatchewan on a temporary work permit for at least 6 months as a physician, nurse, or other health professional, and meet the criteria of this subcategory. For qualifying studies, exams, or certifications, you may contact, for physicians, contact the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Saskatchewan. For nurses, contact one of the following that applies to you: the Saskatchewan Association of Licensed Practical Nurses, the Registered Psychiatric Nurses Association of Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan Registered Nurses Association. For other health professions, see a list of health professional associations in Saskatchewan. Subcategory 4. Hospitality Sector Project. This subcategory is for foreign workers who want to apply for permanent residency and are currently working in Saskatchewan on a temporary work permit. Have been working with an SINP hospitality approved employer for a minimum of 6 months, 780 hours. Are working in one of the following jobs: food beverage server, NOC 6513. Food counter attendant kitchen helper, NOC 6711. Housekeeping cleaning staff, NOC 6731. And meet the subcategory criteria. Criteria are: have a valid work permit issued by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada through a Labour Market Impact Assessment for food beverage server, NOC 6513. Food counter attendant kitchen helper, NOC 6711. And housekeeping cleaning staff, NOC 6731. If you are not yet working in Saskatchewan, you can apply to the hospitality sector category as a food beverage server. You must have proof that you worked in Saskatchewan before for a minimum of 6 months as a food beverage server. Have finished at least grade 12 or equivalent. Work for an employer that has been approved by the SINP to participate in the hospitality sector project. Work in Saskatchewan for the employer offering the job for at least 6 months. Have a job offer of permanent, full-time work from an approved Saskatchewan hospitality employer. Have at least Canadian Language Benchmarks, CLB, 4 or higher English ability in all 4 categories: listening, speaking, reading and writing. And have a valid SINP job approval letter. Subcategory 5. Long-haul truck drivers. This subcategory allows trucking firms to bring long-haul truck drivers to Saskatchewan. You must begin working for an approved trucking firm on a temporary foreign work permit. If an approved trucking firm offers permanent employment, the trucker may apply to the Sinp for permanent resident status after 6 months of employment. You must meet the subcategory criteria. Criteria are: be working for an Sinp-approved Saskatchewan trucking firm for at least 6 months on a temporary work permit. The permit must be issued by IRCC and based on a positive LMIA from Service Canada. If you are not yet working in Saskatchewan, you can apply if you have proof that you worked in Saskatchewan before for a minimum of 6 months as a long-haul truck driver. Have a current Saskatchewan Class 1A driver's license. If you are not yet working in Saskatchewan, you can apply without the Class 1A driver's license, but you will need to get it once you arrive. Have a full-time, permanent job offer from your employer. Your employer must be an approved trucking firm in Saskatchewan. Have at least Canadian language benchmarks, CLB, 4 or higher English language ability in all 4 categories: listening, speaking, reading and writing. Have a valid SINP job approval letter. Subcategory 6. Students. This subcategory is for students who graduated from a Saskatchewan institute or a recognized post-secondary educational institution in Canada. You've worked for a minimum of 6 months or 780 hours of paid employment in Saskatchewan. You have a current, permanent, full-time job offer in your field of study from a Saskatchewan employer and meet the criteria of this subcategory. Eligibility for students who have graduated from a Saskatchewan institute. You may qualify in this subcategory if you have graduated from a recognized post-secondary institution in Saskatchewan with a certificate, a diploma, and a degree. You have worked for a minimum of 6 months or 780 hours of paid employment in Saskatchewan. Eligible types of work experience include on-campus, off-campus, co-op terms, graduate fellowships that can be verified by your institution, work experience gained on a postgraduate work permit. You currently hold a valid post-graduation work permit from IRCC. You have a permanent, full-time job offer in your field of study from an approved Saskatchewan employer. The job should be in an occupation in the National Occupation Classification, NOC, Matrix Level A, B, 0 or in a designated trade related to your field of study and requires post-secondary education. You have a valid SINP job approval letter. You have a minimum language score of Canadian language benchmark, CLB, 4 if your job offer is in a NOCC occupation. Students who have graduated from an institute in Canada. You may qualify in this subcategory if you have graduated from a program equivalent to at least 1 academic year, 8 months, of full-time study from a recognized post-secondary institution in Canada, outside of Saskatchewan, with a certificate, a diploma, a degree. You have applied and received a valid post-graduation work permit from IRCC. You worked after graduation with a post-grad work permit for at least 6 consecutive months, minimum 780 hours, of paid employment in Saskatchewan in a job related to your field of study. Eligible types include work experience gained on a postgraduate work permit. You have a permanent, full-time job offer in your field of study from a Saskatchewan employer. The job should be in an occupation in the National Occupation Classification Matrix Level A, B, O, in a designated trade related to your field of study and requires post-secondary education. You have a valid SINP job approval letter. You have a minimum language score of CLB4 if your job offer is in a NOCC occupation. SINP, Category 3. Entrepreneur and Farm. The entrepreneur category is for foreign nationals who wish to obtain or partner in a business in Saskatchewan and be actively involved in managing it while residing in Saskatchewan. There are 4 steps to the nomination process. 1. Expression of interest, EOI, submission to the SINP. 2. EOI selection and invitation to submit an application. Candidates' EOIs are selected based on their point score, with those with the highest points selected during each draw. The number selected is dependent on program requirements. After candidates are invited to apply, applications are processed in the order that they are received. 3. Business establishment. 4. Nomination through the SINP Entrepreneur Program. You and your family can start, obtain or partner in a business in Saskatchewan and be actively involved in managing it while residing in Saskatchewan. International Graduate Entrepreneur category. The International Graduate Entrepreneur category is for international students graduating from a Saskatchewan institution who want to become an entrepreneur. Through the SINP Entrepreneur Program, you and your family can start, obtain or partner in a business in Saskatchewan and be actively involved in managing it while residing in Saskatchewan. There are 4 steps to the nomination process. 1. Expression of interest, EOI, submission to the SINP. 2. EOI selection and invitation to submit an application. Candidates' EOIs are selected based on their point score, with those with the highest points selected during each draw. The number selected is dependent on program requirements. After candidates are invited to apply, applications are processed in the order that they are received. 3. Business establishment, and 4. Nomination. Farm owner and operator category. The farm owner and operator category is for foreign nationals who'd like to move to Saskatchewan and who have proven experience in farming, have considerable capital, money, assets to invest in a farming operation, and plan to buy and run a farm in Saskatchewan. Please note this category is strictly for business in primary agricultural production, crops and livestock. If you're interested in agribusiness operations, you may qualify under the SINP Entrepreneur category. You cannot apply in the Saskatchewan Immigrant Nominee Program if you are a refugee claimant in Canada who are claiming refugee status from the Government of Canada. Anyone living illegally in their country of residence or in Canada. Anyone who has had a removal order issued against them by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, or Canada Border Services Agency, and those who are prohibited from entering Canada. If you want to find jobs in Saskatchewan, go to saskjobs.ca. For lists of healthcare jobs, go to healthcareersinsask.ca or jobbank.gc.ca.